Now, before we start, I do have a few introductory words that I'd like to add to today's some thoughts that I had, and um, one is about editing in general, which is a very, I started thinking about it, and actually this is a topic that I could speak on for quite a long time, and I do believe that it does need some further discussion, but not here because we'd take up too much time. But people ask the question, well, why does a great master like Paramahansa Yogananda, who put these writings into his Interculture magazine in the 1930s, why does a master's writings need editing at all? Well, you see, the way Swami explained, he says, Master English was not his native language, and the process of editing is very time consuming and tedious. And some people have the idea that, well, if it's a master, just flows out in finished form, and all in one go. And he says that's not how it works. It's not how it works. Not that it couldn't work that way, but for a whole book, master expected and wanted and had people edit what he wrote. He would write drafts of various things, and he'd ask people in the organization, finish it off, make it sound nice. And you can, think of things in your own life that you've done that. If you're in that position, you just get the thought is what is the important point. The finished product takes work and it takes refinement, and so it was with Master. He expected his works to be edited, and he had to, of course, you have to choose an editor who is in tune with your thoughts, you see. And then, but that channel, and then Master then could work through that individual, through that attunement, inspire that individual then to be the instrument for the divine, because the divine works through instruments in this world. And so the editor is such an instrument. Now, that's a long topic. I could go further and further on, but I won't. But Master, or Swamiji himself, Master had asked him to edit. And this Rubaiyat was one of the works that Master actually asked him to edit. But Swamiji said he was not qualified to do that when he was young. But as time passed, he kept remembering that, yes, this was one of the things that Master had directed him. And so he took up the editing process when he was in it. No, it was before that. It was in the 1990s. And he came up with you see the work, the Rubaiyat that we're studying now is the product of that, and that he felt Master's inspiration coming through him to whenever he did editing work. Now, that brings me to the other point I wanted to mention, and it was pointed out to me just actually over the last week when I was having a discussion with Nayaswami Lakshman. He visited my office for another purpose, and he saw the Rubaiyat, the one that was shown there, this one. He saw it sitting on my desk, and he asked, "Oh, that's such a great book," and he began talking about it. And I said, "Yes, we're doing a book study group." And he says, "Oh, of course, that the copy that you've got there is the first edition. It's not the second edition." And he says, "Swami re-edited that." And I said, "Oh, really?" I mean, it was not a surprise to me because he re-edited many of his works over again, but I had not realized he had re-edited the Rubaiyat. So what we're using, or what I'm using, is the 1994 edition. Now, I don't know which one that you're using, and because which one Ananda Publications puts out in India, I don't know. But he re-edited, and there's a second edition. It's 2007. Now, Lakshman gave me the transcript of the 2007 version so that I could compare the two. And I have to say that there's not much difference. There's not enough difference to make any of difference. But from time to time, I may point out a few little additions. And it's not so much that the meaning has changed. It doesn't. But he would change a word, a pronoun, just whatever the name of some of these little words are grammatically, he would change one. And it demonstrated to me the care that Swami put into what he was doing. Because he would say he'd go over a manuscript, and Lakshman estimated on the Rubaiyat that in the first go through, he ran it through about 50 times. And Lakshman was the fellow who had to proof it all. And he was the fellow who took those proofs and then put them in the final form. So, and then Swami would read it again and again and again. But you could see after a period of 12, 13 years, he reread it and he says, oh, I should have used this word instead of that word. And you have to hunt. Now, there are some areas in the editorial comment, the last section of each quatrain, where Swami would add some thoughts that were absolutely his own thoughts, inspired, of course, by Master and his teaching. But he added a few little things here and there. That was the part that's mostly, if there are changes, it occurs there. But he didn't, of course, Edward Fitzgerald, he didn't change that at all. And Master's paraphrase, he had very few things there. Again, but it was to clarify a thought that what Master was saying. He would change a little word here or there. And then the expanded meaning also, a few things. And also in the symbolism of the words, he would change a few things, but a very minor. And so you may find, if you're using the 2007 and I'm using 94, well, you may find us at odds for some pronoun here or there. So anyway, with that, let's begin. And we stopped and we're on quatrain 4. And Blaise is going to share with us quatrain 4. And just for a reminder for some of those who were not with us last week, if the person who's called upon, and I hope all of you volunteer as we go along. If you're attending here, you'll sooner or later be asked to volunteer, and I hope you always say yes. Or as Master used to, or Gyanamata used to say, just say yes and make it snappy. And so the reader will read the quatrain and the paraphrase. And then I've asked the reader, in this case, Blaise, to summarize that, which basically is what Swami is saying here in the expanded meaning. And then in conclusion, summarize it in 2 sentences, because we're not going to remember the expanded meaning unless you're that, sort of scholarly sort. But and with that, we'll make our way through and any interesting points that you might have. And then if there's somebody else in the audience that would like to comment, then we'll, Blaise can call upon you. So Blaise, I turn it over to you. Get my glasses.
Thank you, Jayaji. So we go on to quatrain 4. Now the new year, reviving old desires. The thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses on the bow puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. So I'll read the paraphrase too. Now in my new life of spiritual questing, long suppressed desires for soul wisdom have revived. Thoughtfully with the discrimination born of introspection, my mind withdraws to inner solitude and silence, where Moses in his purity touched the tree of life, and where Jesus ascended in divine wakefulness to the light of wisdom from beneath the soil of delusion. So going back to the quatrain, now the new year reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires. And as Master says, he's saying that when we come into the awareness of greater realities, that when we realize that things outside of us are not bringing us the fulfillment we are seeking, we begin to look for something deeper, beyond the surface reality that we are used to interacting with our senses. And as this quest begins to deepen, within us is awakened also the desire for soul God perception, soul wisdom that is within us and has been lying dormant. And so we are drawn to look within, to go into that inner silence and look for meaning and understanding there. And then he goes on to say, where the white hand of Moses on the bow puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. White hand, as Master goes on to give in the keys, represents purity. And Moses, Yogananda ji, Swamiji in other works have also mentioned that Moses symbolizes the ego. And so this could also mean that when the ego is purified, and our likes and dislikes have been neutralized, the energy is no longer being scattered or drawn outside. When this ego is purified, we naturally get centered in the spine, where we partake of the tree of life. And in so doing, the energy, Jesus reflecting the spirit, draws the divine energy, Kundalini, which is representing entrenched, I think entrenched delusion is what Swamiji says somewhere in the Raja Yoga. It draws that divine energy up the spine to meet at the Christ center. So this is what I understood of the quatrain of Master's translation commentary.
Now, I have a kind of a thought. Maybe you could answer this. I found it sort of interesting that he would use Jesus and Moses and here he was in Persia. Did you find that strange?
I did.
Didn't it mark your attention? I mean, why would he use? Here's a guy. He's a Muslim. He's a Sufi. Why would he bring them in?
I don't know. I took it for granted that maybe he's referring to the ego and the spirit. Yeah, just the teachings.
Obviously, he was a well-read man, I imagine. It struck me. Now, a second question, if somebody could help me here and look in a dictionary, what does the word suspires mean?
Yes, it means to respire, to breathe, to breathe deeply.
It means to breathe deeply. Okay, because when I read that, I had no idea what that word meant. It was the first time I'd ever, except last time I read this book, I've never heard that word used in conversation. So you would say, I suspire rather than I breathe?
Think I don't know how old and usage that is, JJ, but how the way I interpreted was that inspiration, we look at it as energy flowing up the spine. So it's a spirit awakening, drawing the energy up. When the ego is purified, it naturally draws that energy up. And
okay, let's see. Anybody have any comments on this one?
Yeah, I also feel, Jayaji, and I think Lata has written a note about it in the chat section, that I think the common heritage that Christianity and Islam have and Jewish tradition is with Abraham, I think. I don't know, yes, I don't remember the details, but he was kind of also unifying and trying to make a point over there that all the great masters.
Yes, that's right. They're all Semitic religion. Yes. That's right. That's right. I should know that. I do know that. but it struck me when I read it, and I thought, it showed that connection. Now, Blesi,
yes.
How would you sum this up in 2 sentences?
To sum it up in 2 sentences, when we look for deeper meaning in our life, go within, raise your energy, and try to find that fulfillment and satisfaction inside within us.
Yeah, good. Okay, who's next?
I'm next, JJ.
Okay.
JJ, would you like? Okay.
Yeah, or should I proceed, or should I ask for more comments on this, JJ?
Yeah.
Is there comment?
Anybody wants to share any questions, any comments?
Yeah. Okay, go forward.
Okay, quatrain 5. Iram indeed is gone with all its rose. and Jamshed's seven-ringed cup where no one knows, but still the vine her ancient ruby yields, and still a garden by the water blows. And honestly speaking, I had no clue what he's saying, except when I read that seven-ringed cup, because whenever we hear seven and he's a yogi speaking, it's something about the spiritual, the astral spine. So let me read, friends, the paraphrase here. The sense-conscious mind, Iram, now stilled, appears as if dead. Gone are its roses of false material pleasures. The kingly soul, Jamshed, with its ability to reach out and embrace infinity, quaffs divine bliss from the seven spiritual plexuses or rings of the spine, the cup or receptacle of the life force. Though the truth seeker has withdrawn his consciousness within and may appear to mortal eyes to be lost in impenetrable silence, he revels in the secret garden of the spirit. Wandering down pathways of subtlest beauty, he thrills to fragrances blown to him from blossoms of soul qualities that bloom beside sparkling waters of soul wisdom. From the vineyard of this celestial garden comes the nectar of bliss, pressed by deep, concentrated meditation, from the ruby grapes of self-realization and quaffed endlessly by the soul. That, I think it's quite clear with the paraphrase that, but going back to the quatrain, very interestingly, Omar is making the point that the devotees, like Lazy had read, is turning within and he's drinking endlessly of this seven-ringed cup. And I think to me, this simply symbolizes that, again, it reminded me of, like in the Old Testament, Swami writes in his book, The Promise of Immortality, that they speak of seven shining stones on a brass of rod. Or in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna is saying that there's an outer universe, there is also an inner universe. And we are in the beginning not at all aware of the inner reality. But here again, Omar Khayyam is making the same point that a devotee whose mind has turned within in deep meditation, he starts drinking and basically goes on endlessly drinking through the seven-ringed cup. So I think that's a very, very potent message over there of the expanse of the path. That's what I gathered.
Any comment on that? Questions? No, let's question Aditya and make it hard for him. Anyway, well, how would you sum this up? Shortly, 2 sentences now.
Yes, Jayaji. Let me take a look at the quatrain once again. So I would sum it up that the sense mind is gone with all the outwardness and drinking now of this seven-ringed cup, which no one knows because it's not people's awareness. Jamshed is led into a garden of endlessly quenching his thirst for bliss.
Yeah. Good. You know, the reason I asked for 2 sentences is because most of the quatrains are actually 2 sentences, but not all of them, but generally they're 2 sentences long. And how do we put that into everyday language is what I would be saying. Yeah, asking. Yeah. Good.
If I may add something, Jayaji, in the beginning, I didn't appreciate why Master went back to Fitzgerald's English interpretation, even though his feeling was part, romantic outlook on Omar Khayyam, part spiritual. But now I can see that it's so beautiful. His usage of language is so poetic, and there's a certain inspiration over there. And with his interpretation, a translation, and Master's and Swami's interpretation, it's quite a gift we are getting.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
okay, any other thoughts?
Yeah. Okay.
JJ, you were saying something? I think he has a bad connection there.
I saw Jagdish's hand up.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Jayaji. Hello, friends. It's a question for you, Jaya. Regarding the editing. One, do you know if when I believe you made a point that on subsequent edits, Swamiji actually didn't change too much from the first edition or from the first edit, but do you know if when Swamiji edited Master's work, did he kind of, did he end up changing a lot of the original interpretation of Master?
No, he didn't. Swami was very careful about it, but he said he had to tune in and not change any thought. And you can actually go back to and find, those are in public domain, the original magazines. You'll have to do a bit of searching to find them, but the original magazines you can probably find. And so he took, it was like that going back to Edward Fitzgerald, Master appreciated, although his ability to make things beautiful. And he liked Edward Fitzgerald for that. He says that he had such a beauty, he recognized the beauty of the language, and he appreciated that. That's why he said in that first edition of Edward Fitzgerald, I'm getting feedback, actually, somebody needs to mute somewhere. There, I think it was that one. He appreciated the beauty, and he says that it was inspired. And so that's why he, obviously, he chose that. And so it was the same thing is he wanted, that was like Swami's, he said he wanted to make Master's words as concise and as the proper use of the words. And he said Master didn't always use the proper words, the proper grammar, he said. So it was obvious that some things needed to be changed to get the thought. Do
you know if this was true of other works as well?
Yeah,
the Bhagavad Gita comes to mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely, every one. You look at the autobiography of a yogi, that was heavily edited by Taramata, and there's many of them. Mrinalini Mata would edit, and Whispers from Eternity. And this is why even Master would come out with version after version after version in published form of all of the things that he would do. He would get it better, and he'd get it better, and he'd get it better. And so he expected that to happen. That's just a natural process. But the thought is what's the important point, is not changing those thoughts, the concept.
To add on another thing for everyone listening, I'm not sure if Salam is in here. Salam, if you're here, raise your hand. Salam from Singapore. I'm not sure if she is, but we actually did a Rubaiyat study with the Singapore group for one chapter with Darshan, and she actually had I believe the first attempt at taking this was published via SRF, right? I mean, I believe there was like an original.
The Interculture magazine. Yeah, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there was like a book that SRF put out that's also interpretation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, including all of Master's. And she was able to confirm that in that edition, obviously, I don't think Swamiji edited it. It was actually almost the same as what we have. So she at least confirmed that in this edition, SRF didn't edit like too severely.
Yeah. It's just a matter of, two editors they each has their own sense of beauty, and they're trying to express, should I use this word or that word? And it comes down to some degree taste. And so this is why it's very important, if you're editing somebody else's work, to attune yourself to what that person wants to say, not to impose your own idea of what he ought to say. And that's the work of an editor. It's very subtle. And that's what Swami tried to do. And Swami had many of us over the years, we edited Swami's work, and that was while he was alive, and he was going to look at our product, and you had to be thick-skinned, sometimes to take his comments, but because he was saying, no, it's not what I'm trying to say, and to get it right, he was taskmaster with that, about that. And he didn't like people that did his work if he had the time to do it, but he realized, just like Master, you don't always have the time. You're doing a big work, and you don't have multiple bodies to do it, so you have to use your disciples, and that's the challenge for the disciple. So okay, let's go to the next one.
Yes, Jayaji. So I'm doing the sixth one too. And David's lips are locked, but in divine high piping Pahlavi, with wine, 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 red wine, the nightingale cries to the rose, that yellow cheek of hers to incarnate the Lord. Yet he converses in the intuitive language of wisdom with the deeply
I think your voice.
ever he's drink with the ruby wine of
Maybe you want to turn off your video. Try.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You're freezing now.
ever he sings to the soul, drink, my beloved devotee, renew your life with the ruby wine of bliss. Wan though you have become through self-discipline and self-denial, drink from the crystal goblet that I offer you. Drink from it the wine of bliss, and your consciousness will wax crimson once more with divine vitality. That I'll just explain this one word, Pahlavi, over here, as exactly Swami writes, high piping Pahlavi, the lofty language of divine wisdom. It was the scriptural language of the ancient Zoroastrians. Its antiquity and sacredness symbolize here the timeless language of the infinite. And once again, he's right there bringing Zoroastrian religion over there, and true to a master's unifying spirit. And then I was thinking, Jayaji, if I have to mention it in 2 lines, that the devotee who has turned within is now going into the spine. After long practice, sometimes we grow tired. Renunciation outwardly perhaps has taken too much of its toll, and God is expressing now his love by again saying, drink, drink, drink of this wine which I'm offering you, and your vitality and consciousness will once again start blooming.
Thank you, Ditya. I would like to actually, in this paraphrase, there's an example of Swami making an editorial change, because I noticed when you were reading, you're reading the 2007, which is the edited version, but I have the original, and the way in this paraphrase, in the very last sentence, it says, drink from it the wine of bliss, and your consciousness once more will wax crimson once more, or your consciousness will wax crimson once more with divine vitality. Now, that's the way you read it in 2007, but the original says, and your consciousness once more will grow crimson with divine vitality, which is very similar, almost the same, but he uses will, instead of grow crimson, wax crimson. And so, you could see, and so he obviously, Swami felt to say it will wax crimson was a little bit more poetic than will grow crimson. And you can, so that, is just a very small, but it was sort of a good example of, you might say, Jagdish's previous question, what the types of changes he made from one to the next. So it, okay, should we go to the next one, Blesi?
Yes, Jayaji. If anybody has any comments, we are happy to hear them. Otherwise, we'll go to the next one. The next one is Quatrain 7 by Selvarajji.
Thank you. Good evening to all. I'll read the quatrain 7 now. Come, fill the cup, and in the fire of spring, the winter garment of repentance flame. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is already on the wing. So I'll read the paraphrase. Come, fill the cup of consciousness with the divine wine of bliss. Cast away your material desires, deceitful, because forever disillusioning, and fling into the crackling fire of fresh spiritual enthusiasm your robe of penitence for having ever indulged in them. This winter garment, cold from soul-chilling blizzards of sense pleasure, would only freeze to immobility the pulsing bliss throbs of your heart. Bear your feelings now to spring zephyrs of divine hope and aspiration. Waste not these few precious earth years. The bird of life has but a short arc of time to fly. Soon, how sadly soon, it will slip its earthly form and vanish into the infinite. So come, fill the cup. See, the first quatrain, Omar says, awake from the sleep of ignorance. In this quarter 7, he says, come, fill the cup. See, fill the cup of inner conscience with the divine wine of bliss, because that alone will give you permanent joy. And he says all the other desires. See, I will come to the second line. The winter garment of repentance flame. See, the winter garment of repentance flame. See, he says in the first line, intoxicate your mind with the divine thought, and in the fire of spring, the winter garment of repentance flame. He says there is no brooding over the past. We have taken innumerable births because of our sins, and we have accumulated a lot of sins. And this winter garments, fling the winter garments in the fire of spring. We can change it like that. So you can throw those things. These winter garments become very cold, and it is not allowing you to enjoy the freeze of God's hopes and divine aspirations. It prevents you from reaching there. So he says you throw the winter garments indirectly, and in the fire of spring. In the fire of spring means the fire of new spiritual enthusiasm. It has been given there by the Swamiji. So that you throw that because this desires are nothing but Maya. It never gives you any permanent joy. It will go on increasing always, and there is no end for your desires. What we can say that. So the very thought of our sin itself prevents us from embracing the central breeze of divine hope and aspiration. So the bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is already on the wing. See, the bird of time, he says about the life in this earth. Life in this earth is very short. So as Shakespeare also says in one of his plays, that world is a stage and we are all merely actors. So we have come to this world to perform certain duties, and when the time is over, one is when the God, the director of all the whole drama, says cut, we have to leave. So he says the time is very less on this earth, and before we depart, we have to decide where we have to go. What is our destination? Then we have to go to the place where from there we have to come back to earth again and again and again, undergo all those sufferings, or you want to go to the destination of God.
Eternal freedom.
Yeah, eternal, where you will get permanent joy. That's what it says. So we can take the last line also first. The bird of time has a little way to fly, and though the bird is already on the wing. To avoid that, you come and fill the cup of divine wine, which will give you permanent joy.
Now, how would you put that into 2 sentences? Sum it up for the audience. You're Omar in the modern language.
See, if you take that ordinary sense, it is just like Keat says in Ode to a Nightingale, oh, for a draught of vintage that has been poured in a deep delve there, tasting of flora and the country green. So it is not that wine. That wine is giving you temporary numbness, temporary relief from the pain. But here he says the divine wine of bliss that gives a permanent joy.
Well, that's pretty good, but I think that was 4 sentences. Anyway, that was very good, very good. Lizzie, call for comment?
Yeah, anybody would like to share? Even from your experiences or what you might like about the quatrain?
Oh, I did notice one thing. As I said, I was looking for the changes. Again, he in his keys to meaning, he uses in one spot there, he uses discouraging, and he changed it to and discourages. Very picky, a little minor, but for some reason he thought it read better. Anyway.
Thank you for pointing these out, Jayaji. It's nice to know.
It reminds me, like Swami sometimes used to say that his job was like a plumber to make the water flow smoothly. And it is very interesting that to meditate on these minor differences, they suddenly do change a certain flow. So thank you for pointing it out.
And I think the metaphors are so, they just help you feel the power behind the words, the vibration of the words in a very beautiful way. The winter garment of repentance. And so you just feel the quality of repentance very clearly. And likewise in other quatrains too, the metaphors are very, very, they evoke very clear feelings. And
I think that's why Master liked the poet, Fitzgerald, because he had a very way with language like that. He was very flowery. That's nice. It's evocative, very evocative.
Very evocative. Okay, JJ, I think we don't have.
Jagdish wants to say something.
So I think this one, especially more so than anyone's that we've read so far, is such a explicit call or like expressive praise of almost like for joy and like vitality and possibility, and quite a disapproval of too severe an attitude. It would seem to suggest that quite a bit. And if you want to join me on page 31 in the editorial comment, this paragraph really caught my eye. It's the 4th paragraph from the bottom. It begins with a guilty. So page 31, 4th paragraph from the bottom, a guilty conscience, so great spiritual teachers have declared, must be redirected toward positive ends. Thus, it can become an inducement to ultimate success. Only cowards view their mistakes as a self-judgment. I was struck by this paragraph just because my mom and her friends right now are entering that age where, they're in their mid-80s and they tend to look back on their lives. And so much of what that age group is expressing is exactly about regrets and what I shouldn't have done, or only if I had done that, or if my kids wouldn't have done this, or if I didn't get cheated and all of this, And it just seems to be like, this is it, right? I mean, that's the point. Like, don't almost like don't wait until it's too late to strive for joy and your mistakes and things that have occurred in your lives are not there to necessarily punish you to death. But it can be used to transform to something that is definitely a lot more elevated, right? To transform it into something like spring and newness versus like freezing in the cold of isolation. So that paragraph really caught my eye, and it just wanted to share that particular.
I might add to that, because I am a bit older than you and some of the others, and that as age creeps up on you, I have made that observation within myself, and I've made the same observation as you have about other people, is there's a tendency when people get older to look back. And looking back has its positive and its negative. And when you're younger, you don't tend to look back too much. You're looking forward. You see, a young person is looking forward to their life. Older person, I think some of the others in the audience here have a few years on us, as I do. There's this tendency to look back, and the negative side of that looking back is regret. And Master said that the two things that draw us back lifetime after lifetime are desire and regret. And you can't change the past. You learn from it, but that learning turns in, and you put that feeling into it, and it shifts into regret. And that's what Swami's saying. You can't do, you have to be careful of that, and don't take, because that's what you're going to take with you when the time comes for to pass from this life. You're going to be looking backward, and that pulls you back. And then back we come to fix it. Now it doesn't mean all of us have karma, things we wish we didn't do, but you have to somehow resolve those things in a positive way to look forward. So, yeah.
Also, on a side note, my inspiration of Ananda is like, really, when I am your age or 80 and above, I want to be just like you guys. I don't want to be like people that I know out in the world regretting everything that they've made. And when you suggest things that they can immediately do, it's like, nah, it's too late. And it's like, of course you're gonna come back and face this again. It's like it's so like you see it, you see it. Like the next time you're gonna try to come back and get like a better job, or not cheat on your wife, and then another piece of the sweater is gonna be affected. But yeah, as an aside,
you start now. Start practicing now. I just will conclude this by saying that as you were reading that, I saw that was a place where Swami made changes. He mentioned, don't be a coward. He mentions the word coward. And the first time he wrote that, that last sentence of that paragraph, it says, it can be made an inducement to ultimate success, and must not be accepted spinelessly in a spirit of self-judgment, which is a little bit different, but that's of course he's editing his own remarks in that case, so he's more free with his editorial pen, you could say. So, okay, let's go to the next one. Who's next?
So we don't have the next person here. It was supposed to be Manoj for quarter.
Oh, Manoj, where are you, Manoj? I'll read it. I'll take it, and unless somebody else wants to take it, because I'm always encouraging people to take it. Somebody out there want to volunteer? No, Jagdish, you can't because you did it last time. I want to get a new face. No, I won't call anybody because that would be maybe not.
Lata has the next one as well.
Okay. So should I go? I'll read it then. Should I read it? This is number 8, quatrain 8. And look, 1,000 blossoms with the day woke, and 1,000 scattered into clay. And this first summer month that brings the rose shall take Jamshid and Kaikobad away. Behold, 1,000 buds of worldly enjoyment burst into blossom, then shriveled and died. Perceptive souls cultivate a different sort of garden, inner stillness, wherein they plant fair flowers of soul qualities, irises of divine dignity, daisies of cheerfulness, and the fragrant rose of wisdom, timeless in its perfection. Only wisdom can release the soul from the unceasing fluctuations of life. Joy one day, sorrow the next, fulfillment one day, disappointment the next, life one day, death the next. Again, behold, 1,000 blossoms of soul qualities opened with the dawn of wisdom, and 1,000 others, poisonous weeds of evil, delusive qualities, grown withered from exposure to the ways of higher knowledge, were scattered on the sun-baked earth of matter consciousness. One by one, as the rose of self-realization spreads its petals wide to the inner light of deep meditation, souls are released from earthly bondage to roam in fragrant, fadeless gardens of God consciousness. And this one, this is number 8. I wrote some notes on each of these, and the note I wrote on this one, 1,000 blossoms of soul qualities opened with the dawn of wisdom, scattering 1,000 weeds of ignorance. As the rose of self-realization spreads, souls are released from earthly bondage to roam in God consciousness. And so Omar here is making an observation that all of these qualities, both bad and good, sprout and flourish in our personalities, then fade away over many incarnations. Everything changes, everything comes, everything goes. And subtly behind this thought, he's again, you might say it's present in all of the quatrains to some degree, this feeling, don't waste time, wake up, don't waste time, don't waste time, because this world is fleeting, everything's passing, and grab onto those things that are eternal. And in a sense that I get a sense that here he's making this observation, but underneath it, he's inspiring us to everything's going to pass, everything goes, and take heed of that. Anyway, that's off the spur of the moment. That was my thought. Any thoughts? Any comments?
Jaya, did you read in the second paragraph, perceptive souls cultivate a different sort of garden, inner stillness, and then something about they plant? Because in my version, it's wherein grow, and that would be kind of a biggie.
Now, did you just join us?
No.
No? Okay, we were talking about the difference in versions.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm just pointing that out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably if you noticed if you noticed that difference, probably Swami did too, and that's probably why he made that change. So why don't you, since I don't have the new version, why don't you read that sentence or that thought, and so that you can show, so that I can hear it.
After inner stillness, my version says, wherein grow the fair flowers of soul qualities. And then it goes on like the irises, the daisies, and the fragrant rose. And so mine, it wouldn't be as active as yours if I heard correctly that you said wherein I think they plant, which
Okay, now which paragraph are you? I can't find it.
Number 2.
Okay.
Perceptive souls.
Perceptive souls cultivate a different sort of garden, inner stillness, wherein they plant fair flowers of soul qualities, irises of divine dignity, daisies of cheerfulness, and fragrant rose of wisdom, timeless in its perfection. What does yours read?
Mine says, instead of wherein they plant, mine just says wherein grow. And that to me would be quite a big change.
From active, in other words,
yes.
Perceptive souls plant fair flowers versus perceptive souls observe the growth of fair flowers.
Yeah, it's a
So they don't plant them, they observe them.
Well, it just says where they grow,
And I think-
these
Yeah,
fair
but-
flowers.
But they're not planting them.
And I
They're
think
not
he's saying
planted.
it's an awakening
Yeah,
rather than a.
yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting. That's interesting. Since I don't have it and haven't studied, I can't comment on it more than that. But yeah, it's not as active.
And also, interestingly, in the editorial comment, he writes about Jamshid and Kaikobad as historical figures. And I was also relating it to the spiritual principle that Yoganandaji mentioned about how when somebody is freed in God, it also is a great spiritual blessing for their descendants. I don't know, probably there is a similarity or likeness of reference.
Okay, number 9.
Right, okay, Lata.
Oh, we have good. We're just right on time here. What does?
Namaste. I'll read the quatrain first. But come, old Khayyam, and leave the lot of Kaikobad and Kaikosru forgot. Let Rustum lay about him as he will, or Hatim Thai cry supper, heed them not. And then reading the paraphrase. Come, pursue the ancient way taught by Omar Khayyam, the path to soul emancipation. Souls appear continuously on earth, sing their peace, then slip away as they came, mysteriously. Let people be what they will, lazy or active, bored or engrossed in material pursuits. What does it matter? Be neither saddened nor elated by anything that occurs in this world. Let not outer attachments impede your soul's progress in its race towards inner freedom. O discerning one, rise above life's dualities, above the endless gradations of relativity. Lo, every plan for success so wantonly embraced, ever looming disaster so fearfully denied, all have in their sum total 0. What are they but fictions, after all, fleeting mind children in life's constantly changing dream? Ignore them. So it's interesting that I got this quatrain to look at, because it's also a lot about what my life's been like. And if I had to summarize it very succinctly, then I would say it's a call to remain even-minded and not get carried away either by the material gains and pleasures and sensual pleasures out in the world, or to get too attached to your non-attachment, but have your focus on your goal, and at the same time enjoy the moments in life. If you're working hard, don't feel burdened like a donkey, he explains later on. And somewhere in these quatrains also there is a reference to all those famous people who've lived before and have vanished into nothingness. So that's the transience of life. And so it's more about having the focus on the right goal and not getting carried away, or neither feeling you're doing it alone and feeling overburdened by it. That's broadly what I took. And it's interesting that Jagdish was mentioning this and Jayaji was discussing about the regrets of people who are in the later years of their life. And I had read this article and I keep referring to it. It's by an Australian nurse who runs a hospice center, where she talks about the top 5 regrets of the dying. And she saw a lot of people passing. And of that, 2 of them I picked today, and which is one regret people have is I worked so hard. And the other regret they had was I should be happier. And I thought that talked beautifully to this quatrain. So that's a little reflection.
What were the other three?
Send it to you, Jayaji. So the others were I should have been more compassionate with myself. I should not have put up with things that I did. Some of the things like Jagdish was talking about his mom's friends. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting article. Yeah. There's even a book. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying you feel that you've left the world of Kaikobad and Kai Hosru behind.
Yes. True.
Yeah, I think it's good when you can actually see these applied. But isn't it amazing? I mean, if you didn't have somebody of perception like Master giving some interpretation, the reading of this is so, I mean, it would just go right by. I mean, so, but then once you see the other perspective that Master introduces here, you say, oh, okay, I could understand that side too, but I could see why people have not understood this. I mean, it's over the years. But interestingly, Swami made this point. He said, but yet, if the worldly interpretation was the true one, it wouldn't have lasted all of these centuries. Why do people keep coming back to it and rereading it? And because it has some power that couldn't have been engendered by worldliness. And so he said just that alone gives a clue that there's something deeper.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the other thing is you learn and you forget. And then you again bang your head and then you again learn and then again you forget.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you, Lata. Oh, you got to sum it up in 2 sentences.
So I would say don't lose focus of the goal. Yeah. And it's a zero-sum game. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. All adds up to zero. All adds up to zero. Thank you. Perfect. Well, God bless all of you for this week, and it's the fun of having fun of tuning in and sharing Omar Khayyam together. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Let's figure, 5 or 6. It looks like it'd be a good number from one week to the next. Okay. God bless.